All right, let's take a second here and welcome your master glassblower gaffer to the stage. This is why you're all here. This is Catherine Ayers. Yeah. She loves it. If you see something that you like, you feel free to do that again, all right? She'll be assisted by Tom Ryder. Yeah, there you go. And then no applause necessary. I'm here to assist you, but I'm also going to jump in onto the stage once they need a couple extra helping hands. So my name is Heather. If you have any questions while we're going through, we love audience participation. I also want to take a second here and let you all know that we are live streaming. So I want to welcome all of our viewers who are joining us from all over the world and watching Catherine do her special project. So for those of you live streaming, please feel free to ask questions. We do have Amanda. She can help answer questions. And if not, she's going to text me your questions and I can answer them. So if I'm on my phone, I'm not being rude. Okay? That's it. I have permission, so it's okay. Let me start off by asking all of you, how many of you have seen a demonstration already today? Oh, a bunch of you. Catherine, you got it? They know what you're doing. That's perfect. No pressure. Catherine's a great glass maker. Catherine, how long have you been blowing glass? About 15 years. So she's going to make this look very, very easy. Actually, Tom has about 10 years of experience up here, and I do as well. So you're going to see a lot of experience. We have this very special piece right in the center of the stage. Can everyone see it? I don't know, on the AV booth, can we pull up this piece so that our live streamers can see it as well? Catherine is going to make a similar vessel to the one here with the elephant heads. Thanks up there. A little smaller? Oh, come on, Catherine. You got Tom and Heather with you. All right. Does anyone have any questions so far in the audience? Yeah. Yeah, what are the poles made out of? Why don't they get hot? The pipe that Catherine is using is stainless steel, so it's a poor conductor of heat. Not only that, but all the heat rises up and away from Catherine's hands. It's never really going to transfer sideways down the pipe. If it does get a little too warm, we have this nifty little piece of machinery up here in the front. It's kind of like a glorified water fountain. You pump it with your foot, water shoots up and cools down the pipe for you. So once Catherine starts to get more glass, she'll spend more time in the melting furnace collecting more material. The longer you're in the furnace for and the more of that pipe that's exposed to the extreme heat, the hotter it's going to be closer to where you're comfortable holding the glass. So inside of our furnace, we hold about 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass, and it's held there at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1150 Celsius. Either way you measure that, it is hot. Exactly. Someone's up on it. There we go. It is extremely hot, and it will glow orange. Recently, this summer, I learned that anything that glows orange from heat has black body radiation. So it's going to glow when it's extremely hot. Yeah, you just let me know, Catherine. You can yell at me. Right now, Catherine she's prepared to take some color from Tom. We have the bubble, great shot up there on the AV team. With this bubble, it is cold, so she can take this colored glass that's extremely hot and, for lack of a better term, smear it down the clear bubble. This is called a color overlay. It's how we get a very dense amount of color in the piece. I'll show you some examples here. But because of this color overlay, Catherine's entire piece will be, I'm guessing, is that gray, Catherine? Yeah, it'll be a gray color, just like the one you see at the front. Oh, we have a bunch of different pieces that were made with color bar. Everyone see how you cannot see through the veils of this colored glass? If we look at other pieces, I see your question over there. I'll come right to you. Let's hold up this example. Everyone see the spots on this pumpkin? And so we can use different forms of glass. Catherine is using bar or rod color. This is done with frit. And we also have powdered glass that can give us a hazy effect in the material as well. And we will probably see Catherine use both frit and bar colored glass. We use the most common clear glass in the world. It's made out of 3 main ingredients: silica, soda ash, and limestone. In order to get colored glass like what Catherine is working with, you add different metallic compounds or basic elements from the periodic table. We do not make any of the glass here at Corning Museum of Glass. We simply remelt it. So right now we are ordering our clear glass from a company called Spectrum. They send us little ingots of glass, and we throw them into the same door that we take the glass out of. And right now, the museum orders colored glass from a company called Reichenbach. They've been making colored glass for nearly 200 years. So they're great. They make sure that our colored glass is compatible with our clear glass. You had a question? I answered it. Perfect. We had another question over here. Yeah. Has glass ever been blown in space? I read an article recently where they are messing with glass in zero gravity. So yeah, I'd have to refresh my memory on that article, but they have messed with it. They've even created a substance called transparent aluminum, where they've been able to organize the molecules inside of the glass and make the aluminum or aluminium, depending where you're from, transparent. So science and innovation is a big part of our lives here in Corning, New York. Yeah, another question. One second. Do you need me? Do either of you need me? Are you okay, Tom? Okay. So let me just come out here. Again, I want to welcome any of the live streamers. I believe I did just get a question. Oh, what do I find most chemically interesting about glass? Man, I could go on forever about that. Just give me 1 second. Let me grab, where's your question? Did I have a question over here? I could barely hear you. Over here. I'm so sorry. I walked right by you. Yeah. So what does it mean? Well, this is a chemically interesting question. What does it mean when I say that our colored glass is compatible with our clear glass? What I mean by that is that the colored glass is going to shrink at the same rate as our clear glass. Different types of glass, they heat up and expand at different rates and cool down and shrink at different rates. So our clear glass, is worked at a COE, or coefficient of expansion, of 96. Reichenbach makes sure that the colored glass is also a COE of 96. So everything is compatible. There are many different glasses out there. If you're using a borosilicate glass, you are not going to use our System 96 glass with it because they heat up and shrink all at different rates. Yep. So I'll answer that question from online. What do I find chemically interesting about glass? And I think it is the ability to make colors. There are a lot of glass blowers out there that not only play with the material, but they'll also play with the chemical composition of the glass. So there's a bunch of glass makers out there that are experimenting with different recipes, different metallic compounds, and making all these brand new colors or batches on their own. So I think some of the most interesting colors are ones that react with light, how they refract light differently. Whether you're looking through the glass or looking at the surface of the glass, it can be a completely different color. You know, whether the light is shining through the glass, it'll give you one color, or if it's bouncing off the surface of the glass, it's going to give you a different color. So I really find opalescence glass very, very interesting. There's just a whole chemistry behind it. So yeah, glass color is amazing. They come out with some colors that look different in different lights too. So if you go into a luminescent color or a kind of a fluorescent colored lighting, it'll appear blue, but if you go outside in the natural light, the glass will appear purple, or vice versa. So there's a lot of interesting things when we're talking about chemistry and glass. Yeah, question up there? Doesn't Corning make the glass? Yeah, so you're thinking about Corning Incorporated. Now, Corning Museum of Glass and Corning Incorporated are sisters. You know, we wouldn't be here without Corning Incorporated. They helped create the building that you are sitting in. So we're really proud to share the city with Corning Incorporated. You know, they come out with a lot of innovation and technology in glass. I'm sure many of you have heard of Pyrex or Corningware. They no longer make things that you can use really in your day-to-day life. They're focusing more on technology and innovation. So Gorilla Glass, which is on your iPhones, right? That's thanks to Corning Incorporated. They've come out with a material called Willow Glass. They're responsible for fused silica, which is how you get the amazing view from the back of our furnace. It's also how we have optical fiber. And it's used also on spacecraft shuttle windows. So last I heard, Corning had 62,000 patents on clear glasses alone. So they're the ones responsible really for making those different chemical, different types of clear glasses, not so much us. Watch the screen here. This is a cane roll-up. But she'll make that look really easy. I think she deserves a round of applause for that. Yeah, she's got it. Very difficult to do. So again, I want to welcome our live streamers. This is Catherine Ayers. She's making a beautiful vase with 2 elephant heads on the top of it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask Amanda online. If she can't answer them, I sure will on my phone. So, and the rest of you as well. I'll cover a little bit of what Catherine just did. She took a bunch of these. These are called cane. So they're color bars. We encase the color bar with clear glass, and then we can stretch that glass all the way across the stage. Did anyone see the Don't Try This at Home show? A couple of you? You saw how we could stretch glass across the entire stage. Now, if we control the temperature of that glass, we can control the diameter of the cane, and then we can fuse all these cane together. So I'll pass this around. Please make sure this comes back to me. It is not a good coffee stirrer. Can't use it. All right, so make sure that comes back. Don't put it in your nose. All right. So what Catherine just did is she fused a plate of these cane together. With the heat, fusing all of those little pieces together, she could then roll it up around her bubble into a cylinder. And she's done a fantastic job at sealing up the cane so that they meet perfectly on the other edge. She's not going to be left with a gap in the pattern. That is very, very difficult to do, and I would argue that it's harder to get a nice roll up on a bubble than it is on a collar. So we can take just the cane and roll them up onto the very end of a blowpipe with no bubble created. And you take the end of that cylinder and close it down, and you've created a bubble. So you don't even really have to go to the furnace to gather much glass. You just make sure it's stuck to the end of the blowpipe. Once you close it down into a bubble, you can blow it up into any form that you want. I'll ask you this as well. Did anyone see our Tiffany's palette, the demonstration where they make you a flat piece of glass? Yep, a few of you. Perfect. So if you've seen that demonstration, you can imagine that's just the opposite. You know, they crack a cylinder and unravel it until it's flat on a plate. Now, Catherine's done the opposite. She's taken a flat piece of glass and rolled it up into a bubble. It's going to be very important that Catherine smooths out all of the texture in the piece. Some glass blowers will leave that texture in order to get different patterns in the glass. But Catherine is going to gather on top of this, I believe. If Catherine gathers on this glass and there's texture in between any of those canes, she will trap an air bubble. And that's not something Catherine wants for this piece. She could leave the texture in there and trap air bubbles. Some people do that on purpose, like I mentioned, and we use that in a pattern called reticello, which we do not have up on the stage. So reticello is a bunch of canes in a cup, and they twist those canes or the lines in one direction. They put that cup in a special oven. That cup is held at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit until the glass blower is done with a second bubble of canes twisted in the opposite direction. They then take that second bubble of cane and twisted and plunge it down into the cup that they've held in the oven. When they do that, they trap little tiny air bubbles in between the valleys of the cane. So this is something you can see in our 35 centuries of glass in the Murano section, the Venetian section, that's in the 1600s. They were doing that pattern way back then. If you're wondering what Catherine is doing here, or Tom, I should say, whenever we put the glass on a kiln shelf, which is the plate that they laid them on, we put a little bit of resist. Hot glass always sticks to other hot materials, and by putting that resist in there, we ensure that it doesn't stick to the plate, as long as it's the right temperature. So sometimes that resist can get stuck in the glass, and we get it looks like stones in the surface of the material. And I've already talked about the COE of glass, so we know that glass shrinks when it cools. Now, those rocks would shrink at a different rate than the glass. She'd risk cracking her piece even though she made it perfectly the entire show. She could lose it inside of our large annealers. Not only that, but if there's a stone, she'll also trap an air bubble around that, which we already know she doesn't want. And it can leave a haze in the glass as well. So she'll clean it up. The cleaner the surface is when she gathers on it, of course, the cleaner her piece will be as it follows through. I mentioned our melting furnace is in the center. It holds about 1,000 pounds of clear glass. Now, Catherine is going to start using our or reheating furnace or glory hole. Either one is perfectly fine. But those are a little hotter. Those are at 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And we can get the glass hot again, melt it down, and smooth out all that texture. You'll notice that the doors are different on the furnaces. We can accommodate smaller amounts of glass or larger amounts of glass depending on what doors we open up. Meanwhile, when we open up the furnace door with all the molten glass inside of it, it is a single shape. You can only, if you wanted to heat up a big mass of glass in that, the door would constantly be open and throwing all that heat onto you. Covered a lot. Any questions from our audience here? Yeah. Hi. Yep. Yeah, 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, is that a critical temperature? I would say that's an important temperature because that's the temperature we have found that the glass works the best and for the longest, right? So we have a lot of heat when we come out of the furnace. We can use that initial heat to our benefit. One would argue that the more heat you use from your initial gather out of the furnace, the more shaping you get done with it, the better the glassmaker you are. So it really is all about efficiency. The more heat that you've used with that gather from the furnace, the more you can get done because the glass will never be that hot again. You can get it hot again in the reheating furnace, but of course you're going to ruin your design or melt it out, can crumble and collapse. So the glass does start moving between 1,200 and 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's like taffy. It would be impossible to scoop up out of the furnace without gathering a huge, unusable amount of glass. Yeah. So, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. What's the resist material made out of? I've known of some glass makers that use simply silt or mud from a stream, right? You can use that. Any kind of ceramic resist would also work. I think pumice or cerium, one of the two, can be mixed. Anything really fine as a powder that we can use. And there's so many different glass blowers out there, I'm sure, with so many different ways, and they swear that certain kiln resists work better than others, that type of thing. So there are a few out there. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I pointed at both of you on accident. Ladies first, is that okay? All right. Okay, so the difference between taking molten glass fresh out of the furnace and putting these rods of glass on the surface, this will create a pattern in Catherine's piece. It'll give it really nice lines, which I'm trying to see. We've got a piece up here with cane in it. And I'll pass this one around too. This also comes back to me. It does not have legs, cannot walk away. This is also done with cane. I'll show you up close. So we get these perfect lines in the glass. And Catherine actually used a veil cane, it looks like. So instead of having clear glass around a core of color, she put color on the outside, and it'll be clear on the inside. So we get a beautiful veil effect of lines. I'll pass it around. There you go. Yeah, question in the back? Yeah, how was glass invented? Or, well, how did humans come about working with this material. It's hard to say because glass forming and shaping has been around for nearly 4,000 years. Right? It's hard to pinpoint exactly where it came out of, but in the same area as Mesopotamia, along in the Middle East there, they were thinking that maybe they were observing nature and the glass that occurs naturally. So when lightning hits the sand, there's glass that naturally occurs. Or you can get their fires hot enough in the sand. Again, glass will occur underneath the fire. I've also heard that ceramics came around about the same time. And the glazes that they were using on the surface of ceramics is vitrified. It is a glassy surface. So they were noticing the glazes running down, collecting in the bottom of their kilns and creating glass. It was something, if it was hot enough, they could scoop up and play with. So I've heard a couple different versions of the story, but again, 4,000 years ago, they were solid forming glass, so casting glass in the lost wax process. So building a little mold out of beeswax, say, encasing it in a resist, melting out the beeswax, flipping it over, and pouring glass into that mold. They could also do kiln-formed glass, or core-formed glass, where they wrap coils of glass around a core and break out the core. Glass blowing has been around for nearly 2,000 years, and again, that's also pretty hard to pinpoint, but we attribute that to the ancient Romans. 2,000 years ago, of course, the ancient Roman Empire was vast. So again, it's difficult to pinpoint. But with the invention of glass blowing, of course, we could make larger hollow items. Right? So it's really that observation of the natural world. I want to again welcome our live streamers who are just joining us. This is Catherine Ayers. She's assisted by Tom Ryder, and my name is Heather. If you have any questions online, please feel free to submit them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Someone wants to know if the light waves coming off the hot glass are harmful. Up here, we're not working with too much of a hot enough temperature to be wearing glasses to protect our eyes. If we had to wear glasses up here, you all would have to wear glasses sitting in your seats, right? Because that light can be so dangerous. If you go up to our flame working demonstration, or if you're aware of flame working or torch working, they will wear special didymium glasses, which are purple, and that reduces the sodium flare that you see from the glass, which is harmful to your eyes. For us, with a 2,300 degree Fahrenheit furnace, it's not dangerous. A lot of glass blowers won't normally stare into the light, right? You kind of pick a point to look at, usually the edge of your piece or the edge of the door. You're not going to stare at the brightest section. We have shields in case your eyes do get tired. There's didymium shields on the larger shield there that can protect your eyes as well. So it's not terribly dangerous. We're not staring directly into the light. So it's not dangerous to our eyes at all. Yeah. Yeah, 4,000 years ago, what were they using for a fuel source in order to get the glass molten and workable? Wood and air. Or you can use a bellows system with wood and get it hot enough. I'm a professional, so when I go camping, I play with glass in my fire. I don't try that at home, right? Don't do what I do. But you can get wood fires hot enough to play molten glass. We're using a furnace that is 1,000 pounds of molten glass. They were using much smaller furnaces, 5 or 10 pounds of molten glass, so they could use the entire thing throughout the day and turn it off and be fine. Okay. I'd love to roll that animation of gathering. If you take a peek at our monitors, thank you. This is a cutout of our furnace and how Catherine scoops up more material. Now, this is how she's going to make a larger piece for you. She needs more material to do so. She'll take the cold bubble with all that beautiful pattern work on it, and she'll plunge it into the molten glass. And she turns in one direction and spools the glass up just like honey out of a dish. You can see that vibrant orange glow is back to the glass. That's all the intense heat, remember, from our furnace. And there she is using the pipe cooler I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Cooling off the pipe. Now, the closer you can hold to the glass, the more control you have over it as well. You can imagine trying to hold a 5-foot pole with molten glass off the end. At the very tip, where you can barely get a grasp, that whole weight is going to pull down towards the ground. It'll pivot right off. So we get past the fulcrum point, right? We get past the balance, and then we have much, much more control over the glass. A nice wide stance is what you want to see with this amount of glass. Oh, I was asked the other day, what's the most intense part of making a piece? And I mentioned that this was it. Taking that final gather of glass, it's starting to reheat the core bubble, and once all of that glass is moving, Catherine is really fighting gravity in order to keep it off the end of the blowpipe. Actually, I then have Tom, you can see, is backing up. He might not be turning as much as he is pushing down on the back of the pipe, because he doesn't want it to dump right out. Yeah. How heavy is that right now? What do you say, Catherine? 600 pounds? You go to the gym today? Don't have to now. Oh, probably about 10 pounds, maybe 10, 12 pounds. It's not very much, and I'm no physicist, but I've been told it's about 4 times heavier than if you were to hold it up to your center of gravity, because it is off the end of that 5-foot pole. Yeah. Yeah. Do you let the glass do it as what it wants to do, and sometimes it just works out. Sometimes there are very great surprises when you're working with the material. But with Catherine's experience right now, she had the design in mind, and now she's taking those steps in order to make it successfully. It's a lot like baking, right? If you want chocolate chip cookies, you're not going to throw raisins in there. So she's following the steps in order to create the piece. Yeah. Let's see. Can glass be so hot it burns up? So you can start to, we call it boiling. You can boil the glass if you get it too hot. For instance, if you use, I've used an acetylene torch, acetylene oxygen torch on glass, and you can boil the glass because that just simply gets too hot. So you start burning away the flux, and you get bubbles in the glass, and the glass turns kind of a really ugly brown color. So you can boil the glass. I will always control the temperature. Up here, the hottest torch that you'll see Catherine use is a propane oxygen assisted torch. So that one gets about 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It does glow blue because of the intense heat behind it. And if Catherine left that intense torch on a single part, she could very well boil the color away, especially if it's on the outside surface of the bits of glass, because she will be using that torch, I believe, in order to sculpt our elephant heads down here. You can see we have beautiful tusks on the elephant. We also have eyes, so those will be flame worked or sculpted onto each elephant by hand. Okay, so she will use that hot torch. Again, that's oxygen and propane. And then we also have a larger torch that is just propane. You can see it's going off right now. That's always lit so that Catherine can automatically light her other torch, or she can just pick up what we call the fluffy torch and use it on her piece. So that big torch that you'll see her using, she'll use it to manage the temperature of her vase or vase. And you'll see that later on in the show. Any other questions from our audience? Okay. All right. So Catherine right now is using our marvering table. This is about, an inch and a half of stainless steel. A lot of our tools up here are stainless steel. It's, again, because it's a poor conductor of heat. This marvering table is perfectly flat, so as long as Catherine turns at an even rate, and she doesn't marver the same section twice, so you're rolling one way. If you stop to turn the other way, you've marvered or touched that glass twice with a cold metal table. You're going to take away the heat from a certain edge. You'll have an uneven heat around the entire bubble. If you go to blow that up, the air only goes the path of least resistance, so you're going to blow up the hot side. Meanwhile, the cold side you hit with the marver twice is going to stay rock solid. It won't move. So that's one of the hardest things to learn, right? That turning motion. It's very, very difficult, especially on the marver. It's a lot of people find it's easier to turn in one direction. but it's a bad habit. You have to be able to turn in both directions in order to get an even form. If you only turn in one direction, you can twist the glass. And Catherine doesn't want to twist the lines that she put in her piece anyways. Is there any practical use to boiling glass? Are there any effects worth implementing? I would argue that there are other ways to get bubbles into glass rather than boiling it. When you boil the glass, you're changing the chemical composition of it by burning away the flux or whatever is easiest burned off. So I don't think personally I would use it. There may be glass blowers out there who do, but there are plenty of other safer ways to get bubbles like that into the glass. You can use baking soda. So if you take a bubble and dip it into water that has baking soda mixed into it, you can then take that and gather on top of it. That baking soda will gas off inside of the furnace and you'll trap air bubbles throughout your entire piece. Of course, you can use that cane method I mentioned earlier to get bubbles. If you want that ugly brown color in glass, I'm sure it's already made, so you don't really have to go about boiling the glass in order to get it. Yeah. So here we see Tom inflating the glass and Catherine turning. This is a great way to have a bird's eye view over the glass, make sure it's inflating just how you want it to. And then they can also get a lot of volume on what will become the shoulder of the piece. I saw a question up here? Yeah. Yeah, did Catherine apprentice anywhere? Did she go to art school? You went to RIT, right? So Catherine has a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from RIT. There's about 40 to 50 different accredited universities in the United States that offer glass blowing, normally in their fine arts sculptural department. Tom went to Alfred University, and I went to Illinois State. So it's fairly typical to see glass blowers of our age that have found this in college. Okay? Of course, you don't have to go to college. I'm sure parents don't want to hear me say that. But you can learn from any glassmaker, right? I highly encourage you to Google hot glass studio in your area. When you go home, look up a hot glass shop. I worked outside of Chicago for a year before I came here, and I worked out of a studio that had a Groupon. You could go online, buy a Groupon, and he would let you come in, gather the glass, put color on the glass, and make a flower. So I learned a lot through him, too. But of course, if you're working for a glassmaker, you will normally make what that glassmaker is making until you work your way up the steps. So that'd be a typical apprenticeship. Apprenticeships, there's probably about a handful left of them in the United States. Simon Pierce is one of them. There's a handful of them out on the West Coast that offer glass blowing. If anyone is also looking for an expensive habit, it's never too late to try, right? Over at the studio, it's public access. Did anyone have a chance to go to Make Your Own today? No? You make your own glass, right? So you can try out glass making here at Corning Museum of Glass if you go over to the studio. And that's where a lot of people are first exposed to glass. And then you can take classes after that. So over at the studio, they offer beginning classes to advanced classes. Catherine could go over there and take a class from one of her favorite artists. And that's constantly going on. Not only that, but they have artist residency programs. It's really a world-renowned facility. So I definitely encourage all of you to go check that out if you haven't yet, before we close at 8. So I want to take a chance and welcome everybody again who's joining us on our live stream. This is Catherine Ayers. She's making a beautiful, large, tall vase for you with sculpted elephant heads here in just a moment. You can see everything that Catherine is doing. It's very deliberate. I think that's one of the most important words, being deliberate and efficient. Every angle that Catherine holds the blowpipe, every tool that she picks up has a specific use and purpose. Some of those tools are natural forces, right? She can use gravity to elongate the glass. She can even swing the glass, getting a little pendulum or centrifugal force on it, stretching it, making it much longer. You'll notice there's a little extra thickness off the very end of the bubble. That becomes important because that will be the bottom of Catherine's piece. We always like to put a little extra thickness on the bottom of our pieces because it is the foundation, right? If we were to imagine that this piece here was Catherine's, right? Right now, it's attached to the blowpipe from the opening. Later on, we'll attach what we call a punty, a secondary iron or a temporary handle to the bottom of the piece and break it off of the blowpipe, flip it around so that she can add her elephant heads and the beautiful design she wants on the top. So I know it always seems backwards. Even when I describe it on the microphone, it seems backwards to me. But glass blowing, again, it's been around for nearly 2,000 years. And in order to get a hollow form, we need a way to start a bubble. The only way to open up that bubble is to break off the 5-foot blowpipe that's attached to the opening. Yeah. Yeah, the image out of the furnace. So a few of you are probably wondering what kind of GoPro we found to stick inside of our furnace, right? You let me know if you find a GoPro that can go on that furnace. You can make some amazing videos with that. What we have is a window in the back of the furnace, and it's made out of glass. But the glass isn't melting because it's made out of fused silica, pure silicon dioxide. And that glass melts at around 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Actually, I believe it's 3,060 degrees Fahrenheit. As a pinpoint price there. Fused silica, though, was developed here in Corning, New York in the 1930s by Dr. Franklin Hyde, again attributed to Corning Incorporated. And fused silica wasn't really used until we started breaking the sound barrier. So on spacecraft shuttle windows where astronauts wanted amazing views to be able to see out of their spacecraft. And of course, because of its optical purity, we can use it in optical fiber. So it's an amazing material, something that we are really proud of here in Corning, New York. Yeah, a lot of art comes out of Corning, New York, but also, of course, a lot of technology and innovation. I've mentioned Corning Incorporated a few times, but their headquarters you can view from the museum. If you look across the river, there's a large black building, and that's Corning Incorporated's headquarters. So, yeah, we're very close. Very proud that they're contributing to our mission, which is to educate and enrich the public about glass. So. Catherine's doing a cookie foot. You can see how the glass spread out, just like a cookie, and she'll push that down. You might notice she tacked it first, and with that knob, she can center the cookie foot up. So she didn't just walk up to the marble and smash it down right on that fresh glass, right? If she would have done that, the glass would have stuck wherever it wanted to. It would have been fused there for good. But she went over, she carefully judged where the center of that bit of glass was, dropped down the piece, was able to move it around to get it as close to center as possible. And she'll be able to move that around even further if she'd like to, depending on the heat that she gets out of the furnace. In our reheating furnaces, it's amazing the amount of definition you can get between temperatures. So in the reheating furnace, again, it's natural gas and forced air, and there's a definitive wall of heat inside of that furnace. So depending on how far Catherine pushes her piece of glass into the furnace will dictate on how where the glass is heated up. So it looks like I'm going to run in here. Yeah, sure. All right. So they'll center that up a little more, and I'll stand by here. We're getting ready to punty the piece. So there's about 40 minutes that have already gone into this piece so far with it being on the blowpipe. But don't forget, Catherine created all of those cane, the decorative stripes you can see on the screen there. The cane probably took a good maybe couple hours in order to measure out and cut just how she wanted them and get them into the pattern that she wanted, right? So there's a lot of time that's already gone into this piece. Now the punty connection is a very precarious part of the process. Now, the connection is very delicate. And we are breaking the glass off of the blowpipe and onto the punty. Now the punty, it has to be the right temperature once Catherine is ready for it. It needs to be hot enough to adhere and hold on to the piece for the rest of the show. But it has to be cold enough to break free at the end of the show without, say, taking the foot with it and leaving a big hole in the bottom of Catherine's piece, which I would still use this for flowers, right? I think it would still work. So she's really focusing the heat on the bottom of the piece. I'm going to help turn a little bit. I think Catherine will shape the glass from the inside. Tom is on the ready with a wooden paddle. So they'll be able to get this piece nice and flat. Catherine, would you like me to cap it all? Nope? Okay. What do you need? Yep. Slipping. There we go. Back. Back. Off. Yep. All right, so we're all working together here. I like the fact that glass blowing is a team sport. All of us are here focusing on Catherine's piece, making sure it comes out as successfully as possible. 3 is a good team. But of course, you do not need 3 people. There are some objects you can make all by yourself. Smaller objects. Some glass blowers prefer to work completely alone, so they'll bring their own punty. They'll bring their own decorative bits like handles and lip wraps. So it all depends on what you've practiced and how you've been trained. With that being said, all 3 of us, Catherine, Tom, and myself, have worked on teams of upwards to 10 or 15 people. And that's, of course, when the pieces get much, much larger. They become more technically difficult. We've had a few pieces where we've used this furnace here. Our largest furnace on the stage, I believe we measured it out to be 34 inches in diameter when it's open completely. Yep, I'm here. And then it's probably about 5 feet deep. So you can make a lot of big glass out of that furnace. We had an artist named Raven Skyriver come out. He made a life-size sea turtle. Another artist, Jaime Guerrero, he created life-size children. There's been a lot of big pieces of glass. We have a maestro that's come out. He uses the big furnace as well. His name is Lino Tagliapietra. He's been blowing glass for nearly 70 years. He helped us open this Amphitheater Hot Shop about 2 years ago. Now on teams like that, you have a person whose job is solely to open and close the doors of the furnace, and trying to keep all the heat that they can in, while the gaffer or the master glassblower is sitting at the bench and working. You'll have one person's job, which is to shield or block the radiant heat from the glassblower. And then you can even have a person's job shielding the shielder from shielding the glassblower. Right? So there are a lot of different jobs when the pieces start to get much larger and heavier. So Tom's created the punty. I mentioned that earlier. And you can see how little that bit of glass is. It's a very, very small amount of clear glass. And remember, the temperature of it is extremely important. Now, not only is the temperature of the punty extremely important, but the body of the piece has to be warm enough to survive being introduced into the extreme heat of our furnace. Back. If the body of the piece is too cold, we risk thermally shocking the glass. If our glass is heated up or cooled down too quickly, it'll crack and break. I've even seen pieces explode. So everything about this connection, everything about the body of the piece has to be just right. So we've got the 3 T's up here. Actually, it's 4 T's. Timing, teamwork, temperature, and Tom. All right, a couple of drops of water on the jack line. Make sure that crease is the weakest point in the glass. With just a tap, the piece will break exactly where Catherine wants it. Tom catches it. Beautifully done. You all can breathe again. All right. So we're going to take some time and open this piece up. You can see we have a very simple, I would argue, beautiful form for the vase. So Catherine can go into that, opening it, and open it up however she wants to. And I believe this will take a moment. Oh, look at that shot. You can really see the beautiful cane work that Catherine did earlier on. Again, those lines in the glass. So I'll have a second here before they pull me back in and start sculpting the elephant heads. I saw your hand first. I'll grab you up there. Yeah. Yeah, does the piece have to be completed from start to finish? Once it's on the blowpipe and you're starting the main vessel of your piece, I would say Catherine has to finish this. She can either finish the form and put it away and then make the elephant separate, or she has to go through the entire thing, apply the elephant heads, all the pieces, and then she can put it into the annealer where it'll cool down to room temperature. You know, some glass blowers, they'll take a lot of process and they'll take a lot of time. So they'll make pieces of glass in the hot shop, anneal them or cool them down to room temperature very uniformly and slowly, and then they can carve into them, they can cut and bevel whatever they want into the glass, heat it back up slowly, and then reuse those forms. So there are ways where we can postpone using different pieces of equipment, but this piece, Catherine will definitely finish from start to finish, yeah. Another one? What would be the value of this piece? If you could pay Catherine enough to retire for the rest of her life comfortably, you could buy this piece. Oh, all of the pieces that we make up here are priceless, right? We do these demonstrations purely for education and enrichment. We do not sell any of the pieces of glass that we make. Instead, we raise money for different charities and foundations in the area. Through the Glass Blowing at Sea program, we've also raised quite a bit of money for Breast Cancer Research Fund and the World Wildlife Fund. So we do donate a lot of the glass. We also give away the glass to our most excited audiences. They caught on slowly. We'll see how it goes. Keep that energy up, probably reward you. So we do random lucky light draws here at Corning Museum of Glass. If you're lucky enough to see it during one of the shows, you could be lucky enough to walk away with a piece of glass that we made right here. So just a way to pull in those online viewers who are streaming right now. Take a second and welcome you if you're just joining us. This is Catherine Ayers. We're working on a vase right now that will eventually have elephant heads on it. And she's just opening up the top of the form. All right, any other questions we have up here? All right, none from our streamers. That's perfect. All right, Catherine, I'm coming back for you. Now, Catherine's gone through, she's opened up the glass. I believe she even cut through the glass a little bit. Did you cut the glass? Did you cut it? Yep. So cutting through glass is fairly tricky. Of course, the glass has to be the right temperature. Don't go home and try to cut one of your cups because you feel it's too tall. Right? It's cold, it's not going to work. In fact, you should probably just end up hurting yourself. Oh, of course, the glass has to be hot enough. You can see how hot the glass is by how orange it is right now. It's also moving all over the place for Tom and Catherine. Oh, so cutting through glass, it has to be the right temperature, and it has almost a spongy resistance. If Catherine were to try and cut through the glass and it cooled down too much, she could also send a check or a crack down the side of her piece. She could also dull the scissors or shears. So you learn, it's one of the things you learn as a beginning glass blower. You kind of practice over and over and over again. I had a glass blower friend who would practice trimming a piece by taking paper towel rolls or, toilet paper rolls and cutting through them as she was turning them. Right, because you can't just cut straight through the glass. You also have to turn the glass into the shears, right? You can't just sit there still and cut through the glass and hope that you get a nice even edge. You have to cut while turning the piece. So that's another thing that makes that extremely difficult. Constantly using both hands. Remember, Catherine's been working with glass for nearly over 15 years, Tom and myself about 10. So I heard an explosion from behind me. I always get asked, how do we clean our pipes or how do we get the glass off of the pipes? And they do it themselves. So they clean themselves off. Remember, when glass cools, it shrinks. And the glass off the end of the pipes and punties, it's going to shrink at a different rate than the metal. So if you hear any explosions from the hopper here, that is just because they're cleaning themselves off. Right? We recycle the glass. Any clear glass that we use that becomes scrap, we can throw that right back into the furnace we took it out of. But pieces of glass that have color in them or have scale from the punties and blowpipes, we don't reuse that here. Instead, it gets recycled as different construction materials, like aggregate and concrete. I recently read an article that said certain asphalt roads, sparkly roads at night, they're 99% recyclable because of the amount of glass that they use within them. So always recycle your glass. It can be used in so many different forms. All right. So Catherine's getting ready. We've got the go-ahead to make some elephant. Do you want the ears first? All right. So it looks like, Catherine, you're going to start the bits. The trunk? Sure. How big would you like that? Double dip on a 3/4? Okay, so I have not made one of these with Catherine. 2 ears with that one, yep. Hold on, I can't hear you. The same amount? Okay. So I'll follow Catherine. Now she's going to apply the ears first. And you'll see her efficiency and how she cuts the ears. She'll actually be able to get 2 ears out of the 1 bit of glass. I'm going to gather up the same amount of glass. Now, as a skilled glass blower, you can gauge how much glass you're going to pick up. And you really can only pick up a certain amount of glass off the end of one of these solid rods, depending on the size. If Catherine had wanted more glass, I could have gone in for a double dip, or to cool the first gather down and reapply more glass. But I just followed form, judged how much she needed by how much she already has on her bit. All right. Lots of communication here. When Catherine's ready, she's going to bring that bit. She said, cut it, pinch it. There we go. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Cut it, pinch it. That's okay. Just don't want to get you too cold here. Oop. All right, so timing. All right, that's what we're working with now. Timing is everything. Tom has heated the piece, so Catherine has enough time time at the bench to shape these elephant ears. You can see he's stopped turning, allowing the piece to fall back on center. And that's what makes sculpting these fairly difficult. Now, in order to have a symmetrical part, or a symmetrical piece, Tom is really going to gauge where center is. You can see him flopping back and forth. So here's the pinches for the ruffles on the elephant's ears. And then since I've started the second bit, by the time Catherine is done with the first elephant's ears, my bit will be ready for the second elephant. Catherine, did you have one coat of color? Yep, okay. Well, there's a lot of jargon you've probably heard back and forth. We have different sized pipes. I heard Catherine ask for a big gather on a 3/4. That's what's in my hands right now. We have 1/2-inch rods, 3/4, 5/8. And it all depends on the amount of glass that you want to gather, and that's the iron that you'll pick up. Yeah, I'm gonna just shape it real quick. I said iron, but remember they are all made out of stainless steel. That is just a factory term that I've picked up working here with a lot of the gaffers who used to work at Steuben Crystal. So Steuben Crystal was a company based out of Corning, New York. In fact, you're sitting in the old Steuben Crystal factory. When we did the renovation of this place, our bosses decided to keep the spirit of glass blowing alive in this facility. So Steuben was a company using lead crystal glass, founded in, I believe, 1903. They started closing their doors in 2008 and finally closed in 2011. Now, Steuben is being stewarded right now. There are a few designs being released, but it'll never be what it was in its heyday. Right, so if you have Steuben glass, hold on to it. So it is still being made here in Corning, New York, but only a few designs are released throughout the years. How are we doing on questions? Yeah, torch, sure. Yeah. They have a question. They want a torch on the puntee. So this is where the fluffy torch comes in handy. I can help manage the temperature on the back of the piece while Catherine focuses on shaping the elephant ears. Now, because the puntee is the last amount of glass into the furnace and the first amount of glass out of the furnace, it's getting the least amount of heat. Yeah. The trunks, gather 1/2, 3/4. Yeah. So the puntee, if it falls below 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, it will fail. And that's why it's so important to manage the temperature on the back there. You'll notice that Tom is being very careful with the heats that he takes. He'll flash the piece or give it a quick overall heat in order to give some heat onto the puntee. But he doesn't want to get it hot, too hot, and ruin Catherine's shape. I'm starting the trunks over here. Will become the heads of the elephant. I've made a few of these with Catherine before, and each bit is going to be a different shape that I bring. The last bit was a little more long. This one is going to be more like a strawberry, if I remember correctly. And we shape these bits in specific ways because then the glass will fall and flow in the way that Catherine wants it. A cylindrical piece pulls out much differently than a piece that's shaped like a strawberry. And you'll see here in just a moment how Catherine is going to use this shape to her advantage. Catherine, I'm ready when you are. You're gonna take a flash, or you want it? And a quick heat. A little more like a handle, sure. So she did want it more like a handle, a little more cylindrical. Okay, it'll settle down when she hangs it, she said. Cut it, yep. All right. She'll also be able to put in the mouth all at the same time here. So this will be a lot of fun. All right, I'm coming at you. You can see Catherine's moved to the bench. Want me to go back in the furnace for a second? Okay. All right, so down it goes. Now the bit has already naturally formed the face. Yep. She'll cut the mouth. She's pulling up the trunk at the same time. And this trunk will become the handle to her piece. Nice turning by Tom. I'm making sure that trunk didn't tag down onto the body of the piece. Yep, I gotcha. And then I'm going to quickly start on the next trunk. Remember, we're racing against the clock here. I need to be able to get as much shaping done as possible. I'll bring Catherine the same amount of glass, the same shape with the same amount of color, so that it matches the first elephant. And then she'll be able to put on the finer details of each elephant. I know we have 4 tusks that have been made. We'll be able to put the tusks onto the elephants. Remember, she'll also probably use that torch that she has in her hand right now to put in eyes. She can even heat up the bit, especially exactly where she wants to heat it up, and be able to sculpt the bits that I just brought for her. All right. You'll notice that the trunk that we just applied is the hottest piece of glass on the piece. And this piece of glass is cooling down at different rates. Remember, the foot and the puntee is very, very cold. It's getting the least amount of heat. Meanwhile, the tusk, or the trunk, and the ears are fairly thick, and they'll stay hotter for longer. So all this stress becomes a challenge as well. Now, thin glass will heat up faster, whereas the thick glass takes a little longer to heat up. So we're constantly juggling these different temperatures and different thicknesses. Now, if the strain becomes too great between the different thicknesses and the different temperatures, remember, this piece will crack and break. There are many different forms of clear glass in the world. Some of them are not very susceptible to thermal shock. The fused silica in the back of the furnace is a great example of that. I believe its COE, or coefficient of expansion, is about 1.5. So it doesn't expand or contract very much at all. That's how it can be 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit on one side in our furnace and nearly room temperature on the other. All right, so we're about the same temperature here as the last one. Catherine, let the piece fall a little bit off center so that it could fall back on center as she's shaping the second elephant head. There we go. Notice that shaping handles like this are a little bit like shaping a wet noodle. Okay. Tom's, again, very quick to not let that tusk tag back onto the body. Catherine can line them up, make sure they're nice and even. And then I'm going to get ready here and pick up some of these tusks. You said you wanted them on a punty, Catherine? And on the tips that are facing me, or I have to turn them around? Okay. So I'm going to turn these around. Okay. Sure, yeah. Catherine was very smart. She made some extra tusks. It helps to make parts before the show, or even in your project at home. If you're a glass maker, the more parts you have, if a piece breaks, you're prepared, you're ready, and you can fix the piece without leaving much evidence that it had broken at all. So she's really thought ahead. She's planned this out. She's ready with all the pieces in the garage. So the garage is this unit here. Off to my left, your right. And inside of this garage, it's about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Catherine quite literally parked the tusks she's about to apply to this piece on the cold side of this garage. And I'm going to pick them up now on a punty and put them into the warm side. So I'm slowly preheating the tusks that Catherine made, so I don't crack them. I think that's one of the worst feelings as an assistant, breaking your gaffer's pieces of glass. So being extra careful over here. Yeah, I'm ready in a couple seconds here. So being very, very careful. Now Catherine's getting ready to flame work on the eyes with that hot torch. She's using a black glass, of course. This torch is great. It's a beautiful way to get a lot of detail into the piece. She can do a few of them at a time. We've got an eyelash that will break right off. Perfect. Here we go. So over here I have one of these tusks. Trying to keep it warm. Okay. Yeah. She said when she... Yeah. So she said she's going to do the two other eyes, and then she'll take this tusk right from me. I am just in a holding mode here. So I'll take a second here again and welcome all of our live streamers who are still with us or just joining us. This is Catherine Ayers. She's making a beautiful vase with elephants as handles. Trunks are great little handles. So one of the wonderful things about working in this shop is that we can make literally anything we want. Again, that's because we don't sell any of the pieces. I was asked if you could buy this piece, how much it would cost, and I said priceless. Of course, I encourage you to shop locally if you wanted to get a gauge on this piece of glass and what it would cost. Really go into a gallery and look, or even look for a comparable piece in our glass market. Okay, I'll get another one. Yeah. So these trunks in here are pretty difficult to pick up. So Catherine will quickly get another one. Now, the good thing about the trunks is that they're very small and thin. They don't take much time to preheat or get ready and prepare. Tom is over here being a great assistant, making sure that the back of the piece is getting a decent amount of heat. Catherine can walk right over. And she's going to start to heat up the tusk. Yeah. Yep. Okay. And then I'll go for the next one. So this is pretty much as close as we'll get to mass producing glass. By me getting the next trunk ready for Catherine, she's all set up for the next part. So she can do this fairly quickly. Of course, much of the glass that you see today is not handmade like this. I would say about 3% of the glass in stores today is made by hand. And of course, many of you have noticed that the price increases quite a bit if a piece has been made by hand. That's because of the overhead, how much it costs to make a piece of glass on your own. You're looking at pieces of glass. Catherine has 15 years of experience. That's not something you would normally see. We lose a lot of glass makers in this process because they can't either handle the heat, or they've broken too many pieces of glass and broken their hearts. So Catherine has stuck through it. It really shows her passion for the material, her dedication. That's really what you need to become a skilled glassmaker, is that dedication. So 15 years of experience. And then Catherine, if she was making this piece all on her own in a studio, she would be paying the studio for rental time. She'd also be paying Tom and myself for being assistants. She'd pay for the materials and her color that she would use. Well, there's a lot of things that we have to think about when we're pricing out our glass. Now, mass-produced glass, there's a lot of different variations. You can have completely machine-made glass. There's machines out there that can put out 3 million units in a single day. Of course, human glass blowers could not do that. There's a gradation too. So there are glass blowers that work alongside machines. For instance, I watched a video over at our Reykjavik Research Library. It was a Swedish production factory. And in that factory, they were making wine glasses. Well, in order to make the wine glasses, they would move down a conveyor belt. A glass blower would start a bubble, blow that bubble into the size and shape of the wine glass, and then put the blowpipe onto a conveyor belt. As the conveyor belt moved down the line, another glass blower would apply a gob of glass to the bottom. And the machine would come out and pull out a stem. Glass blower applied a fresh bit of glass to the bottom of the stem. A machine would come up and squeeze out a perfectly round foot. They'd take the whole piece off the conveyor belt, break it right off of the blowpipe onto a leer, or moving annealer, another conveyor belt. They'd score and crack the top, so breaking off the top of the glass, a nice perfectly even line. And then they'd fire polish that break. After that, the glass would be annealed and slowly cooled down to room temperature. They could take it right off the line and sell it. And we have all 4 trunks. Both the elephants are sculpted. What do you all think? That was some great enthusiasm. I think they did good. Yeah, Catherine agrees. It's Tom. Thanks to Tom. Yeah, so great work up here. You know, it's very difficult to get symmetrical handles like that. I can agree. So Tom is going to suit up. Remember, you know, I can't stress the fact that there are so many different temperatures within this piece. And if we were to allow these different thicknesses and different temperatures to cool down at different rates, it would crack and break. So in order to alleviate the strain from the creation process, Tom is going to put on very fashionable PPE, catch the piece in his hands, and then walk it over to our annealer. We have 13 annealers here at Corning Museum of Glass. We will never run out of space to cool glass down. Now inside of our annealer, the glass is going to soak until it's all the same temperature. When it's all the same temperature, then the glass can drop down to about 200 degrees every 2 hours. It'll stop at certain strain points in the glass and soak there once again. This piece of glass is going to cool down over 12, maybe even longer, maybe 16 to 24 hours, just to make sure that the strain is all relieved. All right. Over here on top? Okay. So right now, Tom, do you want me to help you hold that down, Catherine? Yep. So some Kevlar gloves. Tom has on a reflective jacket. And a face shield. I'm not sure if anyone's made cookies at home and opened their oven and had their face kind of in the wrong spot. Get a nice rush of hot air. Tom is about to stick his face into a 900-degree Fahrenheit oven on both doors. On the left, do you want me to open both doors just in case? Left, right, or middle? Let's take a peek real quick. Let's go on the left, yeah. Tons of room on the left. So they left us room throughout the day. We have the annealer. It is full of glass that they've made throughout the day, but it's been held at that 900-degree Fahrenheit temperature. So at the end of the night, we can push a couple buttons, and the glass will cool down very slowly. So Catherine's going to make sure that the puntee is the weakest point on the glass. She'll do that by dropping a couple drops of water on the puntee connection. Never the piece itself. Don't want to crack the foot. I'll help hold this down. Notice Tom is right underneath of it. Don't want this piece to fall too soon. A tap is all it's going to take. Go, a small torch smooths away any sharp mark left from that break, and then Tom will carefully walk this over to the annealer, hands on fire and everything. What a great assistant. Let's give it up for Catherine Ayers. Tom Ryder is on fire. You know what? I want to thank you all for joining us during this demonstration. I want to thank everybody online.